Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jeanne Gallagher, founder of Discover Rising Tides, and welcome to Discover Rising Tides, How the Outside Makes the Inside Better, where we explore the importance of the outdoors and maintaining life balance. And through this series, we'll be talking with women business owners to understand their journey. And today we're taking a little twist, and this is part 2. And instead of starting with Denise's Healthy Living, Healthy Life segment, the three of us are gonna talk, and we're gonna take a continuing conversation on Denise's 3 Ps. And so first of all, Denise is the curator of Healthy Living, Happy Life, and an international best-selling author, Healthy Living, Happy Life, A Practical Path to Finding a Healthy Lifestyle That Works for You. And Diane McClay is an empowerment coach, writer, and outdoor enthusiast who is in the business of creating positive change with the tools of choice and courage, helping you put the calm before the chaos. So we're gonna maybe create some chaos and
Love it.
and have a really great conversation. So this is part 2, and we really didn't finish what we started. And so let's talk a little bit about the 3 Ps, break them apart. And Denise, where should we start?
Okay, so the three Ps, let's start with what the heck are they? Number 1, planning. Planning is such an important part of life. It makes health, it makes happiness, it makes career so much simpler when you have a plan. So P number 1 is plan. P number 2 is prioritize. You know, how often do we have a list of things that we need to accomplish, a shopping list, whatever it may be? And you can only do maybe 2 or 3 things tops during a day. So we need to really prioritize. What are the things that are the most important? What's that number 1 thing that we should focus on? And then kind of the rest of the list can fall below that. And then, of course, the 3rd P, preparation. Preparing to do something, whether it's start a new career, start a new project, get healthy. You have to have a bit of a plan. You have to prioritize. But if you're not prepared and preparing for those changes, everything kind of falls by the wayside at one point, because there's no stability, there's no guidelines there.
And we touch a little bit on how that process can be so overwhelming, right? And so really, I think where we're going to start today is, how do we simplify that for the listeners, but also make it incredibly effective too?
Can I jump in on that?
Because I was just going to ask you to jump in.
Yeah. So as you're talking, so I am a self-proclaimed procrastinator. I still do it. I joke that I've never written an outline. You know, when I write something, I just write. And when I was in school, high school and college, I wrote the outline after I wrote my paper. It's a big thorn in my dad's side. He's like, how come you can't do an outline? It's so simple. All you have to do is think in advance and plan it out and prioritize what you're going to say and be prepared. But for me, I'm a super spontaneous, live life by the seat of my pants kind of person. So that emotionally feels very constraining for me. And I know that I have rejected planning for a very long time. So if this is ringing true for any of your listeners, here's my first hack. Think of something that didn't work well. The trip, the vacation. If you know in hindsight that you wished you would have done X, Y, or Z in order to make that experience better, that is your first place. Because what you can say is, man, if I had more ice over the weekend, we could have not run to the store 5 times. So if you look at something historically that you think you failed at or didn't go according to plan or the way you wanted, especially if you're not a planner, that's the first place to start recovering, right? Because your next trip, you can say, I'm not going to make that mistake again. I might make another one, but I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. And that would be my first invitation. Every time we have something that we wished would have gone differently, do we really put the intentional thought into making sure that doesn't happen again? Or did we just say, what'll be, will be?
And so if you threw a little bit of a planner in there, you could actually come back from your trip or your vacation or whatever that happened to be and do a little self-analysis and make a list of what would we have needed to make this better? And then remember where you put the list so that the next time you go, you can start with that.
My dad literally has his list of what he packs for his hunting trip in his rifle bag. Right? Because the first thing he's going to do is he's going to clean his rifle. And then there's his list.
The interesting thing, this is what I took from what you just said, Diane. So yes, you think of, okay, what didn't go right? What could we have done differently, better for next time? And for me, that's preparing for next time, right? So the 3 Ps really do, you can see where they really do go together. And sometimes, sometimes you kind of turn them, twist them around a little bit. But I think it's one of those things that, yes, if you're a fly by the seat of your pants kind of person, the beauty is you know that, you accept that, you embody that, but you also realize that even that can get better.
Absolutely. If you ask me to plan something like a party, I'm all over it. But what's probably going to happen is I'm going to need to have Denise and Jeanne go with me to the store, because they're going to be like, okay, we have 157 guests and you got 4 liters of soda. we need like if you're not a planner, you need to become best friends with a planner. That's another one of my hacks.
Can I put the caveat in there? Okay, so I am actually a retired meeting planner. My nickname
is that recovering or retired?
No, recovering. Retired. I'm still recovering because I'm recovering from some of my major meeting planning efforts. I think my husband wants me to be completely retired sometimes, but my nickname is the Princess of Planning. So for me, I'm uncomfortable without a plan. So it's and this is what's so beautiful about having friends who do things and see things in a different perspective. There's another P4 perspective. Is what I do isn't I got another one, perfect. What Diane does, the way she does it isn't perfect, but maybe it's perfect for the way we live.
Right.
Sorry, I've got it with the P's.
No, I think this is one of the reasons why the 3 of us, decided we needed to be on together, because one of the things I love about you two is that I feel very inspired by both of you. And there's a lot of really good, juicy information that comes out when the 3 of us actually put all of our expertise and our specialties into one room at one time. I can be prepared. So when I die, I don't want an epitaph. I don't want a funeral. But when everybody is having a party and telling stories about the way I lived, I want someone to tell the story. Can you believe her 2-week supply ran out? Right? Can you believe that she made her 1-day pack last 14 days? Right? That's going to be a good story. And then for that point, it's not that I failed to plan for being out in the wilderness 3 weeks. It's just that I planned for 2 and it took a little longer than we expected.
And you didn't die there.
And I didn't die, right? And I joke about that a little bit, but when I'm out in nature, I want to enjoy my time. And when you go to a brand new place, something can get ruined pretty quickly if you don't plan. So the thing for me is I actually migrate more towards preparing than I do planning. Emotionally planning, there's a barrier there for me. Maybe I need some therapy, Denise, you can help me with that. But preparing, I prepare for the worst case scenario. And a friend of mine and I, who's another ranger, we joke and we say, is it a good thing or a bad thing that you got to use something out of your backpack on your trip? Right? Like, is it good because you had it in your pack and you were prepared? Is it bad because whatever you brought with you, you were planning for something bad to happen? Right? But I migrate towards preparing so that makes my experience more fun.
And it's a good thing you were preparing, because as you've most likely seen out there as a ranger, there are a lot of people that show up in sneakers and no water bottle for a 10-mile hike or whatever it happens to be. There was no thought and you hope that, well, maybe this is their learning experience because they made it out okay. Yes, they inconvenienced a lot of people between SAR and volunteers to come help them out, but hopefully they learned.
Yeah.
And hopefully that was their understanding that they had better be more prepared, or an understanding of what they were getting into.
Yeah, and I think the three Ps, generally speaking, I think it decreases your anxiety and your stress about whatever is coming up or whatever you hope to experience, whether it's a vacation or school that's opening or going to the grocery store or building a program that you're going to teach people about. I think it gets you out the door faster. I mean, in this day and age of us feeling like we don't have enough time to do the things that we want, who does not want to say, grab the bag, go, we're ready? Like who wouldn't really want that?
I agree.
And that takes there is a ton of preparation for that, and also experience. So when you're going to do something, so for people that are going to do something for the very first time, there hopefully is some research that happens behind it. But what are some, like you say, some hacks or some tips for people that are going to either go outdoors for the first time or go on an adventure that they've never been on? How do they do the research or work through the three Ps to be better, have a better experience?
Denise, I'll let you jump in first.
Sure.
You
So
travel a lot. You've got to have some hacks.
I do, we travel quite a bit, and, sometimes for extended periods of time. The first thing I always do is research where we're going to be. You want to know the neighborhoods. If you're going to be staying at a hotel, you want to know the neighborhood that you're staying in. You want to read the reviews of the area, of the hotels, of the restaurants. Because the reviews will generally tell you whether it's a good place or not. There's lots of beautiful pictures on the internet. You can make a place looks, a crappy place look great. So you really want to look at reviews. And this is deciding where you want to stay. To me, this is about safety, but it's also about enjoyability. If you're in the business area of a city and you're there over the weekend, there's nothing happening there.
There's nothing available. There's no food or anything.
Right. Exactly. And so then you're all of a sudden you're stressed out because you have to go find things that they're not in walking distance. And, it just kind of changes a weekend, say a weekend that could be really easy and everything walkable, to something where you have to really step back and go, okay, well, where are we going to eat? And it makes eating a bigger deal than it needs to be. So that's one of the first things. Always
for you, I'm sorry, Denise, but when you get a feel for the area, one of your things is eating healthy and making sure that you use choice. When you're on vacation, you've told me you like a donut as much as the next person, right? Sometimes more. But if you plan and prepare, then you actually don't have to blow your whole entire healthy lifestyle that you've built at home. You can build in your cheat spots. You can build in your, it doesn't matter how many calories that thing is or that cheesecake is, because I know that there's a walking trail nearby. What it does is it actually kind of, to me, it sounds like it's sinew that ties everything together. And then it allows you to bring your lifestyle that you've built a habit out of doing. It allows you to bring it with you. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I know so many times people will say, oh, don't worry about it, you're on vacation. Well, if I had that mentality, I'd be on vacation 30 weeks a year, and that's not going to jive with a healthy lifestyle. So yes, knowing where I'm going to be staying, I bring, if you're on vacation for a week, you can have some allowances, but when you're away for more than that, you really have to wonder, what is it, what are your goals? Because if your goal is to live healthy and eat well, then that has to be a priority when you're traveling as well. And not every night, but it really does need to be a priority. And
if your body's used to that and you're changing a total 180 and you're going on vacation, so it doesn't make a difference, after day 3, you're going to feel like junk. and you're not going to be as awake. You're going to be dragging, and it's really going to affect your experience.
Absolutely. And one of the things that, you know, I've traveled with somebody who has stomach issues, and after a couple of days, if she's not eating right, then there's a question, you know, is she going to be able to come to the event tomorrow night? You know, is she going to be able to join us for that walk? Because her tummy may not feel good. And, you know, when you don't feel well and you're kind of going, oh, maybe I shouldn't go. Maybe I should stay here. I need to be closer to the bathroom, because that happens on vacation. You know, you're in a different area, you know, maybe you're not sleeping as well, whatever it may be. You know, you've taken yourself out of your environment and put yourself in an unfamiliar one. There are lots of things that can happen. And if you don't, and when you're not at home, you don't have all of the, you know, the little hacks or the, you know, the things that you might have at home, those comforts of home that make you feel much more comfortable when you're not feeling well. And so what ends up happening is you end up ruining, or the vacation gets ruined because you haven't been following, you know, your healthy lifestyle.
And that jumps into prioritize, and it also kind of jumps into pre-planning. So if you're somebody that you know in your regular life, you may be prone to digestional issues or intestinal disturbances, then there's the planning to make sure that you have the things with you that make you feel comfortable, like having some extra Imodium in your pocket. You know, if I go someplace, I'm not prone to that, but if I go someplace and I don't know how they're going to cook whatever it is they're going to cook, and I don't typically use a lot of fat, I don't typically use a lot of salt, I'm going to have some Imodium in my pocket, right? I'm not going to have it in my suitcase in the hotel room. I'm going to say, because the worst that's going to happen is if I don't use it, it's going to stay in my pocket. And if I don't take it, or I think, oh, I'll be fine, then there's a really good chance that I might ruin someone else's vacation, because now instead of going to the art museum every, 12 minutes, we got to find a public restroom.
Right. And when you don't, it's one of those things, like I always say to think of it this way, when you go on a diet, right, and you say, I cannot have donuts, what's the only thing you can think of? Donuts. If you're out on vacation and you have tummy issues, you don't have the Imodium, all you could think of is, where's the bathroom? What if something happens? And so it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. If you bring it, you won't need it.
There you go. That's why
Jeanne, I want to know from you, Jeanne, what are some of your hacks? Because you just told us that you travel across country to get to your home location, and you go from East Coast to West Coast. So what are some
vice
hacks?
versa? Yep.
Yeah. What are some hacks for you about planning, prioritizing, preparing?
So we did a really great job this time, and it's 3,000 miles. We call it the week of hell. Well, it's only 5 days of hell. We could make it 6 to make it easier, but why would you do that? Because that means it's going to take longer to get there. We pack. So we haul the Airstream, we haul all of our stuff. But this year we did a much better job packing food, and packing food that will last in coolers going across country. And so that every time we stopped, we had snacks, we had meals. At night, we make our breakfast for the next day, stick it in the fridge so that we can get up, grab coffee, and then drive for a while and stop and eat breakfast someplace. But we're not stuck with gas station food. And when it's dinner time, we have an idea what we're going to have because it's in the cooler. So typically when we travel, when we drive like that, take a long driving trip, we don't touch a restaurant, and the idea is not to touch no gas station food either, because there's nothing good comes of that. Right? You are making extra stops between fuel because you have to, because you ate too much gas station food. Right. So, yeah, right. So there is some preparation that happens. And the only way that we did well is that we've done it and not done well. Right. So we've had trips where, we should have done that, or we should, like you were saying in the beginning, Diane, we should have, or now we know. okay, so here's what works well for breakfast food. Here's what works well for dinner, lunch, snacks. And it's not just it. We pack for the dog too. And now we're in a rhythm. We know that we stop for fuel. Everybody, including the dog, gets a snack. Everybody, including the dog, goes to the bathroom. And then we hunker down for another few hours until the next time. And so it's interesting that the third night is the longest. We travel too many miles. As we're going east, we lose a time zone every day or so, which is uncomfortable because especially the third day when you pull in and it's 10:30, but really it's 11:30 because 2 miles ago you went across the time zone. Mentally, that's just horrendous, right?
I agree.
And so we planned and we prepared and we ate dinner and we had our dinner ready. Forgot to feed the dog dinner, so poor Abby's eating dinner at midnight. But she handled it well. And I'm thinking, how do we do that? We didn't feed the dog. But it is we messed up a bunch. This wasn't our first road trip. And so now that we know, we don't have the huge, well, we do have lists like your dad's list in his rifle case. My husband's better at the list thing than I am. We each have our separate lists. He has a list for the prep to get ready. I have the list for some other stuff. And hopefully there are not too many gaps in between. And because we don't compare lists either, we just
Your own personal list.
Right. There's a beauty in that, right?
Yeah.
And Denise, you mentioned a fourth P perspective. How you look at the cross-country trip is completely different than your husband. Now,
well, my responsibilities are different too. He carries the load.
Right. But that's my point though, is that if everybody in the group makes a commitment to plan their way, prioritize their way. So when you guys come to see me in Colorado, I'm already gonna know. I'm gonna know which state parks I can take you to. I'm gonna know how long the trail is. I'm gonna know what the elevation is in case it's hard for you guys to adjust, right? I'm gonna have a list of things that are like, oh, this is an easy walk. This is a challenging walk. This is a moderate walk, but it's got a really great view. So that's my specialty. I worked with somebody and he always talked about when you work in a team, you put their aces in their places, right? I know 100% that if Denise comes to visit me, I may not have to go grocery shopping, but I can plan ahead and say, hey, I don't know what you want to eat, but I thought we'd go shopping together and maybe we could make a meal together. So I'm going to plan some of our time is actually going to be spent being friends, grocery shopping, and creating a meal. I don't have to actually create all the meals before either of you get here.
You don't have to take the full responsibility.
Exactly. So I don't have to take on the stress, right? But you guys might be like, oh, I don't know what there is to do in Colorado and I have to do all this research. No, you don't, because I live here. I know people. So if you put their aces in their places and let them prioritize and plan and prepare their way, and then hopefully if you're in a group setting, there's a little bit of communication so that, there's like, did we miss anything is really the question that the group should be asking. All right, Diane's got recreational stuff and Denise has food and Jeanne has, food and, artsy stuff. Did we miss anything? Right? That's the question that you ask in a group. But how beautiful is it? How amazing is your trip? Because your husband has his priorities in his list. He lets you do your priorities and your planning. And after a number of years, your planning and prioritizing has now almost become seamless.
Right. And because there's trust. Neither one of us checking the other one. We're just hoping that we're not both forgetting the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that speaks to
what we've been doing this, we've been traveling for a really long time. Even traveling becomes, when the kids were little, we drive 5 hours from our house to another grandparent's house. And with, 2 kids, 3 dogs and a cat, that takes a lot of things that you bring because we brought the cat too. So of course.
Right. But it speaks to Denise's like streamlining the process of getting from here to there, whatever from here is to there is, you've streamlined it. You've done it faster. You've done it more efficiently. You've decreased your anxiety. You've probably over time learned how to decrease your expenses because you're not buying things at the last minute, and you have more fun.
Yeah, the anxiety piece is really important. Let's talk about that for just a second, because that can take over. That'll blow the fun out of everything. And the traveling to someplace isn't always the most fun, and it can be the most anxiety ridden. So by the time you get there, you're either exhausted, didn't enjoy, you really haven't enjoyed thus far. So it can only go up from here, is what you hear a lot, right? Can't get any worse than it already is.
No, that's so true. And I think that the mindset hack there is to incorporate that travel time into the whole experience. So like, I know if I'm on, if we're flying someplace, there's a possibility that, the flight's going to be delayed or canceled, like it was a couple of weeks ago. And to know that these things can happen and to be kind of prepared for it. So as soon as they canceled my flight, the first thing I did was I booked a hotel, because I knew that if they were canceling my flight, they were going to be canceling others. So to kind of incorporate that into the whole trip makes a lot of sense to me, because it's not separate. It's not, we're going to get there, then we're going to be there, and then we're going to go home. No, it's all one. It's one kind of one full swoop. So if you're driving, one of the things that I know I try to do is to actually look and see, like, kind of, again, the plan ahead. What are some of the things that we might be seeing, on the drive, stopping here and there. And Diane, I'll bring you in a second, because I know you just recently, almost a year ago, right? Moved.
What, moving here?
Your move. Yeah.
March. I got here in March.
Okay. So in March, Diane did a big move, and they took their time to get from the West Coast to Colorado. And I think that's really important, is to incorporate that into the trip, understanding that, it could be inconvenient. It could be long days. It could be a little nerve-wracking, but if you know that ahead of time, it takes that stress away. And it's just part of the trip. It's
gives you
not
something to look forward to.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that, again, we're going to come back into mindset, right? A lot of people say, we're going to fly or drive to this place, then the planning is going to start. I can't tell you how many, I love my dad. I love the fact that he's a quad 2 data person. I love the fact that he, when we were younger, prior to having instant access on your phone while you're in the car, we'd pull into a hotel room, and for the next hour to hour and a half, my dad would be poring over maps and creating route options so we could go see X, Y, or Z. That's awesome, but he didn't get to relax. He drove all day. We have dinner, and then he kind of sequesters himself in the office part of the hotel, and he's trying to do the planning. He didn't get a chance to jump in the pool with us as kids. He didn't get a chance to go for a walk and see the evening sunrise. God bless his soul, and he's still alive, but that was something he wanted to do, the planning, and so that we would have an enjoyable trip the next day. But we didn't map that out before we left, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there can be a danger to thinking that the planning can happen after you get to the place. If I go to New York City for the first time, I don't want to have to figure out the subway system while I'm trying to get to the Museum of Arts or whatever, right? I don't want to have to figure out the ferry schedule to go see the Statue of Liberty.
Right. You want to
If
know
I
that
go
ahead
to
of
a new
time.
city and I want to go to an art museum, I don't want to figure out that they're closed on Tuesdays when I plan to go on Tuesday and I didn't do my research ahead of time.
Right.
That's the stuff that's going to get frustrating and
Yes.
bring the anxiety level up.
On Sunday, I flew from California to Maine, and I was up at 0:30 because, I made the reservation, but you got to get up earlier before you get to the airport, right? So, and I was cognizant of the fact that I wasn't going to get to my destination until 4:30 in the afternoon, and I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's a 3-hour difference. So there's just a long time to be awake. So if I had depended upon, O'Hare has pretty decent food, I'll be fine, right? But I packed I packed snacks, then I packed food. And I didn't pack a ton of things because I didn't have any room for it, but I packed a few things. And as I'm walking through O'Hare, and I'm getting a little anxiety ridden because the food choices were less than stellar. And I'm like, why am I doing this? I have food. Just sit my butt down and eat. And I'm like, oh, that was fun. I'm good now. But I almost forgot that I had packed sufficient amounts of things to get me through. And it changed. There was no panic. It changed everything. But you're right. But taking the time beforehand paid off, because now I just can relax and settle in.
100%. And I want to give a hack here real quick. If you go camping or you have a cross-country trip like you talked about, and you're planning to have food in the cooler, like a week before I go, like if this is really more for meat eaters, I haven't figured out how to do it with vegetables yet. But if I have things like a steak or chicken, or could even be pork, a lot of times I will cook before I go, and I will marinate meat. So I will get a flat iron steak or something, cut it into strips, and I'll marinate it, put it in a Ziploc bag, and freeze it. That does two things. When I pack my cooler,
It's cold.
that ready to go, throw it in a pan, marinated meat, it's going to be frozen when I start my trip, but it's going to start defrosting by the time I need to make my dinner.
Yep.
Right. So I make so I make a big batch of something, could be spaghetti sauce, it could be stew, it could be a marinated chicken breast, it could be a barbecue, whatever, but I do it in advance and I freeze it. Those become my ice packs in my cooler, at least for the first day or two. So then I don't have to go get ice that takes up valuable room in the cooler. I am now using something that's already frozen. It's going to naturally thaw and defrost. And by the time I pull over, and sometimes if I want something the first day of my trip, I'll pull it out the night before or like a few hours before. So it starts defrosting, so that by the time I pull over at 2:00 in the afternoon to eat, or 4:00 it's going to take time to build a fire or get the grill going or whatever. It's got that time. So, but then I put it in 2-person serving bags so that we don't have lots of leftovers that have to go into a bulky container in the cooler when we get done.
Can I tell you what you just said to me, Diane, is meal planning. That's what I talk about all the time.
I did planning.
You meal plan.
Miss Procrastinator is not a procrastinator.
Dang, I can plan.
You can plan.
Yeah, so I mean that's a good hack, right? Especially when you do those long drives, and you always have the really big exits where there's lots of restaurants, and then how many people have done this, right? We'll just go a little bit further. I'm sure,
and then there's nothing.
I'm sure there's something down the road.
Yeah, that was the last one.
You don't do that anymore.
The smaller the town you drive through, the earlier things close. So so that's one of my hacks. For me, getting outdoors also is about, so I kind of held up the trail map, right? I'm in a new area. So I've made several purchases where I have company coming every single week in August. I don't know my area yet well enough, and they're here for 3 days or 4 days. So I've invested a little bit of money in some guidebooks. So I may not pick the ride in here, but I at least have a general idea of, oh, here's a place I think I can take my friends, and not have to. I've got 8 people coming next week. Can you imagine how much time we're going to waste if you ask everybody what they want to do and where they want to go?
That's exhausting. Because I can't make a decision.
Instead of saying, hey, here's 3 things that we can do.
Actually, I'm going to make it even more simple. I thought we'd go for a bike ride tomorrow. How does that sound?
Love it.
And then so then there's another hack, right? I'm sort of pre-planning. I might get 4 people who say, yes, I want to do a bike ride. And I might get 4 people who say, I don't want to ride bikes. So then I say, all right, the 4 of us are going to go ride bikes at this time. And these 4 people, I'm going to have plan B for them. Like, hey, while we're riding bikes, you can go do X, which is nearby. Right. And I'm actually going to have a couple of things written out, because I don't want to be the tour director for 8 people.
Right.
If I get up in the morning and 4 people want to go for a run or a walk at 7 in the morning, I don't want to have to come back at 8:30 or 9, because people got up later and they don't know what there is to do. So I'm probably going to write some things down and leave it on the countertop and let people figure it out on their own.
Right.
Right.
And then if they miss it, that's their choice. But
Right.
you're also not responsible. You're not responsible for the ones that decide they don't want to get up at 7 and they're going to get up at 9. But that also, what's challenging is that can throw a wrench into everything that you've planned if your expectations are you're all going to do everything together.
Right. And actually, I'm going to tell people I don't have the expectation that we do everything as 8 people all the time. We're going to have, if somebody just wants to use part of their vacation to use my house to sit in my backyard and read a book, what they need to know from me is that's okay with me. Like I don't want them coming in with the expectation that I'm going to do something for them every single day. I'm going to, here's a list of some things. Here's some places that you can walk to. Here's some places you can drive to. Here's some places I will take you to. So I think that's important also, because we're talking about our own personal sanity when we're doing prioritizing, planning, we're talking about us personally, but it complicates itself when you get into a group of people. So if we have our stuff I don't want to say in control, but if we've created a baseline for how we personally are going to function, I'm not going to get stressed if this happens, right? If I want to take everybody for a hike and everybody's like, oh no, I don't want to go for a hike, I'm going to be like, well, I'm going to go for a hike and I'll see you in an hour when I get back. But I think that's critical.
One of the things that I'm challenged with is, when we have people coming over or coming to the area, I feel like I need to show them everything that I want to do. And everybody has to participate and everybody's going to like it because it's important to me.
Well, and so here's if I was coaching you.
But I like what you're saying. Here's 3 things and here's your choices. I'm going to go over here. You guys can do whatever you want, and we'll all meet back at 2.
Right.
And then we'll do these other things. Right.
Right. But if I was your coach, I would also say, here's a way to change the perspective. There's nothing wrong with saying to your company, here are 3 things that have been on my bucket list or to-do list. I've either done them and I love them a lot and I want to share it with you. That's giving them context, right? So they can make a decision. Or you can say, man, I really want to take you here, but if you don't want to go, that's okay, because I'm going to go anyway. Right. So now what you're doing is you're speaking to a language that I coach on, which is creating options for people. I think as soon as you have options, and planning, prioritizing, and preparing actually sets you up for creating options.
And so choice, which options, is your word too.
You have choice.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like I said, I mentioned, when you're doing all of this, the planning idea, hey, there's going to be 8 of us or 6 of us, or even 4 of us, we're all going to be in this place together. You want to enjoy them as much as they want to enjoy you. And I think you're right. Too often we can, get to a point where we want to show everybody everything and do everything that there is to do. And the last time my sister was visiting, she said to me, she goes, you made this so easy because I thought about it ahead of time. These are some of the things we can do. And we actually ended up doing something that I didn't think that my sister would really be interested in. We did a ropes course. Now, I'm afraid of heights. My sister's afraid of heights and my niece is afraid of heights. My niece and I have done it before. But we had talked about it and we thought, kind of mentioned, the story around the whole place and where it's located and the eagles and all this. It's on a cliff. It's just so beautiful. And so we did, and it was fun because there was some context there, as you mentioned before, Diane. And I think that's really an important thing is to have those ideas ahead of time and then let people choose. I mean, there's that choice, I think choice is such an important part of every day, whether we're at work or on vacation, visiting with others, being able to choose what you want to do. I mean, as the guest, you don't always want to spend, 24/7 with someone. Even though you're there visiting with them, you still need your own space.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into for me, I think it's putting the expectation out there. So when my company arrives, I mean, literally, I might as well have a revolving door on my house, because there's going to be a group of people a day, and then a group of people, and then a day, all through August. If, to your point, like, if I did everything with everybody every single day, I'm going to be exhausted personally by the time the end of August arrives.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that when you familiarize yourself with the expectations, and I think sometimes too often as friends and family, we sort of forget to engage that conversational piece.
Yeah.
What are your expectations while you guys are here? I asked that a week ago, and one of my friends says, I want to go to the Denver Aquarium. I had no idea we had an aquarium. Now, what that does for me is I can either say, oh, I'd love to go with you, or it's not really my thing. Go ahead and go on your own. But by asking my friends in advance, what are your expectations? What would you like to achieve or accomplish while you're here?
Or what do you not want to do?
Yes.
That's a great question, because people are probably going to, what do you want to do? Well, I don't know. Okay, what do you not want to do? I don't want to climb a 14er. So, okay. But they're going to be able to come up and say, here's what I'm not looking for. So sometimes when they say no to this, it helps create the yes.
I love that. Just say that again. Sometimes when you say no to this,
when you say no to something, it helps create the yes.
That is,
I love that.
That's a great hack.
I love that. And I think the asking, what do you want, is important in all relationships. If my husband was out the door, he would be like, wait a minute, that's what I say. Because he does. He asks me all the time, what is it that I want? And with that expectation, we can then make decisions, do things together or not. So I do think that that's really an important piece. It's just to always ask the question, what do you want?
Which beautifully ties right back into, you could put the 3 Ps into this, right? During this time period, what are your 3 priorities? Now, if I get half of my company says, we just want to read, fine. I know that I'm not going to get up early and try to plan a hike for them.
Yeah, right.
Right? So what are your priorities while you're here? How can I help your visit be the way you want? Right? I ask everybody, you're in the eating healthy world. I sent a note to all my company and I said, please let me know if you have any food allergies, restrictions. And then I said, what are your preferences? Right? So now I'm not going to make every single meal for everybody, but now I know that if somebody's a non-meat eater, I'm not going to try to get everybody to go to a restaurant that only serves meat. Again, it kind of comes back to the planning and the preparing.
Or you can have a few basic things available so that it's a starting point. And because quite often, we've already said it, but quite often once you get someplace, the first thing you do is go to the grocery store because you don't know whatever else to do. And now 3 hours has gone by where you could have been a little bit more strategic about that.
100%. Jeanne, is this conversation going where you wanted it to go? I mean, in terms of
have you ever tried to direct the 3 of us before? And I didn't have, I had 0 expectations because I knew that wherever we went, it would be useful and valuable.
Where we're supposed to go.
Exactly.
So how does this tie into your theme, this conversation we've been having? How does it tie into your theme of connecting the inside out and the outside in?
That's a great question. I think the 3 Ps are everything about that, because would it be true that if you were uncomfortable or didn't know something, you would probably hesitate to do it? But if somebody that had knowledge in that area said, hey, come on and do this with me, you're going to go, this was a blast. I had no idea. So if it's going to help people maybe take the time, it's kind of funny is when you're looking at somebody doing something, you don't see all the work that they put into it. It just looks like they showed up. And so I'm just going to show up and do this thing. I do this all the time. I just show up and do this thing. It'll be all right. Well, it could have been better. It could have been a lot better. And maybe I would have known what to expect. But, if we can give people some tips of, It's okay to take the time to prepare, and it's okay to figure out what your priorities are. Maybe it will help them be more proactively outdoors for whatever that means. And if it means that you have to make some planning so that you have 2 hours to sit out in Diane's backyard and read a book, that's just as important as going to the aquarium. But if you didn't prepare for that and all of a sudden you got sucked into the grocery store trip, you've wasted those 2 hours of quiet time in your book.
Mm-hmm. One more P, by the way, you just said proactive, so there's another P.
Oh, there we go. See, we're up to six.
And they all really work with my 3 original Ps. And I think that's what's really important is, it opens your mind to looking at things in a different way. And that's really, I think, what all of us want people to do, is to look at things in a more open way. Different perspectives, P perspective, different perspectives, open life to a much broader, much healthier, happier lifestyle. Traveling can be so stressful, but it doesn't have to be. And I think that's something that we're really showing, is it doesn't have to be so stressful. You can enjoy every step of the way.
And
this conversation though has brought up a concern for me though.
Sorry, Jeanne, I talked over you.
Oh, I talked over you. So we're even.
Go ahead.
So Jinx, I owe you a Coke. So for Denise and I, this conversation has brought up a concern that I think that we should bring out and share with everybody, is that Diane invited all this company and she left no room for us to show up.
The last week of August is unspoken for it.
There we go.
But quite honestly, in Denver, August is like, they nicknamed it Hell's Front Porch.
Yeah, I'm not coming there.
September, October, that's beautiful time.
October's great.
Excuse me, if you want to come in the wintertime and come ski. Nobody's spoken for in November, December, January. You just tell me when you want to show up and I'll make room for you.
Fantabulous. Awesome.
Love it.
Well, ladies, this has been a wonderful time, and I hope everyone enjoys listening to this as much as we have. And I want to thank you both for taking the time to have such a meaningful conversation.
You're welcome. And thank you for the opportunity to bring ease and simpleness into our daily life, into our recreation world, into the outside. I was going to tell people that as a park ranger, if you are starting to go hiking, I'd like for you to have 5 things in a backpack. And that's going to be a map, a whistle, check the area for bears, some sort of a tinfoil blanket, and a fire starting mechanism. Like, you will probably never, ever use it. And I hope that you never have to. But if something happens and you're out there, you at least know that you can stay warm and you can create something. A whistle is a noise to draw attention to yourself. If people wanted to find out more about how to kind of prep to go outside, I'd be more than happy to have conversations with them. And we have a lot of resources within Living Healthy List and within your guest network of people that are very experienced in the outdoors. I would just say, don't let the outdoors be something you don't do because you didn't plan for it, you didn't prepare for it, and you didn't prioritize it as something in your life.
Nice. That's a great way to end that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening today. Today's show is sponsored by Seaside Solutions, my financial services company. As a business owner, it's easy to be pulled in many different directions, and often taking care of yourself plummets to the bottom of the list. For me, I find myself outside to reground. My time outdoors helps me manage my day more effectively and be more present for my clients. Through this, Discover Rising Tides was born. At Seaside Solutions, we truly believe that education is the foundation of financial wellness. Our primary focus is to provide guidance that is designed to help you achieve your long-term financial goals and visions. Working with a plan allows space for doing more things that you love, like being outside to make the inside better. If I can help you create or realign your plan, or if you would like to be added to my weekly newsletter, please let me know. This week's topic was 5 ways to set more achievable goals. Your referral means the big, beautiful world to me, and if I can help, please let me know. And thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.